Good morning. You know, today is one of those great days. For the past few weeks, we have been developing a message series around the letters RSVP. Répondez-vous, s'il vous plaît. Would you please let me know what you're going to do? When we respond, we're basically telling someone else what our intentions are. But in the context of what we've been doing here in church, in that context, it is about our response of faith to God. You know, over the last couple of weeks, if you recall, we've been kind of seeing it develop, and we've been getting these little vignettes, these little insights into what this response is all about. A couple of weeks ago with the lepers, if you remember, there was this response to the power of God, the healing power of God. Then with the persistent widow, we saw that persistence and patience that's required for a believer to have. Last week, of course, was that humble repentance when Jesus contrasted the tax collector and the Pharisee in the temple. And now we're coming to this, our final week, in which we're going to transition this message from RSVP to a thing entitled, What Really Matters. What really matters? You know, I have to admit that a homily like I'm going to give today is one of those more difficult ones to give. So many of you sitting here have a tremendous love for Jesus Christ. I know that. You have this love for Jesus Christ, and it might seem like that's being called into question, but that's not the intent. It might seem that way, but don't be fooled. One of the things I would like to talk about this morning is how so many things have changed. And there's a lot of things that have changed in our world, and one of those big things that you all know and I all know is the presence of the internet and the smartphone. I mean, those two things alone in the last 10 or 15 years has changed so much. I mean, right now, at our fingertips, we have more information available, more that we can find out right in the palm of our hand than ever before. One of the things that are big on the internet now are these social networking sites like Facebook and all those other ones. And I'm always kind of curious because I'm on Facebook and I see these things that people post. And some of the things that they post are these little quizzes. A little quiz will pop up every now and then. And this quiz is supposed to be one where you pop out a few answers and it'll reveal something about you. You know, they have some of these quizzes that will tell you how intelligent you are. Some of them who will tell you what saint you identify with. There was one internet site that wanted to tell me what my bird spirit is. I have no idea. I had one this morning that was going to tell me whether or not I'm OCD, and right away I wanted to put the letters in CDO to have them in alphabetical order. All right, maybe I got 100% on that one. But anyhow, it does tell us something about ourselves, but let's face it, you know as well as I do that most of what it tells us is rather trivial. It's unimportant little tidbits about ourselves. I saw an article the other day. It was a really interesting little article. One of these internet surveys had asked 2,000 men and women in Britain what they felt they couldn't live without. And they gave them a list of some 50 items that they had to rank in order of what they couldn't live without. Now, here's the great thing. The results were broken up and separated by men and women. And so they reported both, and it's interesting. Now, think for a second right now. Is there something that you just believe you couldn't live without? Women, at a rate of 50% in England, said that they couldn't live without, number one on their list, a toothbrush. I'm not making this up. But men, it gets even more interesting for you men because number one on our list was a television. No elbows, ladies. Let's just stick with this for a second. Because number 5 on the women's list was a television, and number 5 on the men's list was a toothbrush. This is something that people are saying is valuable to them. That this is what is of value to them. You know, we do prioritize things in our lives, and we let the world know what is of value to us. This weekend in the bulletin, you have probably noticed, are the financials for the parish for the last 2 years. I put them side by side so that you can take a look at it. I'm going to let you review it because I think that you can pretty much see for yourself what it says, and I'm not going to spend time this morning going into detail. I think you can see that for yourself. But as I give this homily this morning, I want you to just ponder this question in your head for the next few moments. What really is valuable in your life? How valuable is this parish to you? Let me tell a little story. Back when I was preparing to enter the seminary, I was still working. I was working for Grumman, doing fairly well, enjoying my life there, but was preparing for a transition. And so all the while, I continued seeing my spiritual director. And as we were talking at one point, my spiritual director started to shift the conversation and asked me if I had been prioritizing my life the right way and preparing for the big change that was coming. He said to me at that moment, right then and there, he said, with this change coming, what really is valuable to you? And so right away, I whipped out my answer, my faith. Now, figuring right then and there that I had said the right answer, that I had said the perfect thing, that he was going to just shed all these praises upon me, that he was about to speed up my application into the seminary, and even tell them bypass the 5 years and just make him a priest. But there was that long pause as he looked at me, and all of a sudden I started to feel a little bit uncomfortable. You know, it's interesting sometimes how these things happen, but he started to change the conversation. And he said to me, he says, you know what, I want you to go do something. For the next few weeks, I want you to make a chart. And on that chart, I want you to record what you do in your free time and what you do with your money after your living expenses. Now, I was a bit reluctant because I wasn't kind of looking forward to what I was going to get on that. But I went and did it out of obedience to my spiritual director. Well, a couple of weeks later, we got together, and I knew it was coming. I knew he was going to ask, and sure enough, he asked me, he says, let me see the results, let me see your chart. And I was very hesitant because I knew exactly what he was going to say to me. You know, he was going to explain things to me in a way that kind of was interesting. He was going to tell me that I knew already we tend to prioritize things in our lives a certain way. We tend to value things, and what we value does take up our time and our money. And there are ways that we can see what really are valuable to us, and based on that tiny little exercise that I did over a few weeks, I found out that what was most important to me in my spare time was sports. Playing, watching, checking the sports pages, all of that time that I was spending on sports. And almost none of my money was going to a charity or to my parish. Now, what I found out there is what I found out that so many of us might know. We might implicitly know it already. Many of my contemporaries at that time, this was true for them too. I found that I really valued me, and that my time and money were all about me. Now, when I say these things, I say this in the context of this weekend's gospel. I'm saying, now we just heard this beautiful gospel about Zacchaeus the tax collector. But something was going on with Zacchaeus that maybe isn't so obvious, because for some reason, Zacchaeus wanted to see Jesus. Zacchaeus is making it a priority when Jesus comes to Jericho to see Jesus. Now, it might be possible that he heard that Jesus told this parable the week before. He told this parable that shows favoritism to the tax collectors, and, you know, that might have got his interest. I'm sure he's already heard rumors. I'm sure he's already heard a lot about Jesus. But for some reason, you know, this is kind of curious to me. What was it? No, we don't have that answer per se. But for me, what makes it interesting is that Zacchaeus, he wasn't blind. He wasn't lame. He wasn't a cripple of some sort. He wasn't deaf. He didn't need a physical healing. It wasn't any of that. All the other stories we heard, like the lepers a couple of weeks ago, they needed a physical healing. They went to Jesus to be physically healed. Zacchaeus had no need of that. So my guess is that since all of his needs were being met, since he was living in such affluence, since he had great wealth and he was very comfortable, he must have needed Jesus. I'm sure in his own hometown there, he was being treated rather poorly. I mean, let's face it, everybody in the town looks over and sees, oh, Zacchaeus, the tax collector. Oh, that sinner. That's all they see. He was probably recognizing that he needed to encounter Jesus. Now, let's face it, you know as well as I do, deep down inside, aside from a little entertainment value, we don't need internet quizzes to help us understand ourselves a little better. We know deep down inside our needs, we know our wants, we know what's broken, we know what we're looking for. When given the chance, we're going to reveal certain things about ourselves And despite all those answers that we could give on those quizzes, we're revealing ourselves all the time. Because what matters to us most will be reflected in how we live our lives and the things that we're doing. I could spend the rest of my life, you could spend the rest of your life trying to convince others that our faith is important, but it's what we're doing when we say we believe and how we live our lives when we say or believe that answers that question. I can try to fool everybody, but a good spiritual director is going to cut through a lot of that. So despite the fact that Zacchaeus was wealthy, despite the fact that he was so comfortable in his life, I'm going to say right now that Zacchaeus knew he needed Christ's mercy. Zacchaeus only wanted to see Jesus, and that would have been enough to help. That would have been enough to turn his life around. He knew that only Jesus could take away his sins. Only Jesus could forgive him, restore him to his dignity, and make him once again whole. It wasn't going to be a physical healing. It was certainly meant to be a spiritual healing. You know, the fact that Jesus just even acknowledged him, just even looked at him, changed everything. That one glance, that one call to Zacchaeus changed everything. You know, last week I brought up a question, and I bring it up again this week. All of us, you and I, should be asking one question. Who am I that Jesus notices me? Who are you that Jesus notices you? That's a good question that we need to ask in all humility. You know, my answer would always begin the same way, pretty much the way that first reading began today. Before the Lord of the whole universe is a grain from a balance, or a drop of morning dew come down upon earth. But you have mercy on all. You overlook people's sins that they may repent. Jesus did not see Zacchaeus the tax collector, the sinner. Jesus saw Zacchaeus the person, the man searching for God's mercy. And Jesus became that mercy for him. I think Zacchaeus' response demonstrates just how important this encounter with Jesus Christ was. His response, filled with joy and filled with exuberance to the point of giving away everything, shows just how important that encounter is. You know, I'm just kind of wondering, have any of you ever asked yourself this question? What does our parish look like to a lost soul? Now, I hope it's been obvious to you that what's most important to Jesus is the salvation of souls. I think the Gospels bear that out again and again. No surprise there, right? Jesus wants to save souls. He comes right out and says today, I came for the lost. I came to seek and find the lost. What does our parish look like to a lost soul? What would it be like if a fallen away Catholic came here this weekend and showed up at the doors? Would they be able to see Christ? Would they be able to encounter him here? Or could we end up being that crowd that prevents that person from seeing Jesus? It's a tough question to answer. I'm going to ask probably the toughest question that I'm going to ask in this entire homily. Is the lost valuable to us? Is that lost soul of any value to you or me? That's a real question that we need to be asking. You know, the answer to that question is revealed to the degree with which we give of our time and our treasure to support Christ's mission. Jesus has a mission. It's a clear mission what he has, and he's asking us to be part of that. But we reveal how much we're a part of it by what we do with our free time and our extra cash. We're going to be talking about this for the next couple of weeks, so I'm not going to try to touch every one of the points today. There'll be points covered in the next few weeks. But this weekend, I want to talk about treasure. I want to talk about finances. I want to talk about it because how we respond to the Lord shows in our financial giving. I want you to consider for a second your financial support to this parish. Are you giving a minimum but expecting a maximum? You know, we have to admit it, whether we like it or not. Money does help advance the mission of Christ in our parish. I know that doesn't sound always so well to people, but money does make a difference of how we can do things and how we can engage in Christ's mission. So we're here at this point where we're shifting our message from not only our response, but to asking what really matters. What really matters and what is of real value to you? To help yourself maybe to answer that question, you might have to do that little chart like I did those many years ago. Find out what really matters to you. In the end, we all have to ask certain questions, and those questions are things like, do you feel that you could live without Jesus? Do you feel as if you could live without this parish? Your response is going to have to be a lot more than mere words. Words won't cut it at this point. If you do really value this parish, but that value is not expressed in your financial support to the parish, what does that say to you? I'm hoping and praying that living without Jesus or living without our parish does rank just a little bit higher than your toothbrush or your television set. Just a little bit. So keep in mind, today especially, Jesus wants to visit your house. Jesus wants to come to your house. It's the same Jesus that we receive from this altar. It's the same Jesus we can encounter in the sacrament of reconciliation. It's the same Jesus who calls out today to Zacchaeus, turning his whole life around, calling out now to you. Yes, it's the same Jesus who not only wants to visit your house, but he's also asking you to join his mission in seeking out the lost and then bringing them here to our common home, here in Blessed Sacrament. When Jesus does call out to you at some point, what will your life reveal about you to him? Will your response let him know how much you valued him and his church? Have you even had an opportunity, I'm sure, in your life to respond to his initiative of mercy? Remember, we're still in the year of mercy. It's coming to a close in a couple of weeks. This whole point of the year of mercy was that people seek and search for God's mercy. There are so many lost souls out there that Jesus Christ wants to encounter. He wants to encounter them so that he can become mercy for them. In this year of mercy, encounter his mercy yourself. But then ask yourself, is my encounter with his mercy the same as Zacchaeus's? Do I become enthusiastic and overwhelmed and excited to the point of, I'll give away everything because this is so much better? That's the question before you and before me this week. We will continue to ask that question for a few weeks. What really matters? And let what really matters to you show in your life. As this year of mercy is coming to the close, I really do hope and pray that the Lord fill your life with his peace, with his hope, with his mercy, with his love. May he fill your home with joy so that, like Zacchaeus, all will know that you've encountered his mercy. God bless you.